when Shakespeare was intentionally clumsy? How should crude language be felicitously served? The following two amusing lines of dialogue are from William Shakespeare's play Love's Labour's Lost. They have been at a great feast of languages and stolen the scraps, or they have lived long on the alms basket of words. I marvel thy master hath not eaten thee for a word. Love's Labour's Lost is the one Shakespearean play in which language as a concept and as a function is the central theme, principal topic, and primary concern, albeit poorly disguised as a play about love. Here I attempt to explore one of the several adept ways William Shakespeare creates language. It is particularly improbable to find in all history a writer who wields language more nimbly than Shakespeare does, and being a superlative dramatist as well, it follows that this historical advantage that Shakespeare possesses would extend as well to be an advantage to his well-sculpted, multidimensional, and almost autonomous characters. And it does. His characters can produce some prodigious exuberant diction. Although this prodigious command over language is conventionally manifested in eloquence, grandiloquence, rhetorical expressivity, fluency, oratory skills, extensive staring, poetic speech, and so on and so forth, it is in some occasions potently manifested in moments where language falters and becomes, for lack of better words, incapacitated. And those moments are my topic here. I will present two examples of those unsettling, beautiful moments. Before I present those two examples, I think it is important to clarify that the idea is not about moments when a character is rendered speechless or deprived of words due to their being in awe of something or someone, or their being overwhelmed by an emotion, or by their giddiness against something colossal. It is important to make this distinction because in the Shakespearean style, mostly when a character is so rendered speechless, they vocalize that speechlessness itself in an eloquent manner. Well, let's first take a look at two examples of these latter moments to juxtapose them against the moments that instantiate our main idea. Take a look at the two following male lovers as each of them vocalizes his respective deprivation of words as he becomes struck by the presence of his respective female love interest. The first is in the play As You Like It. After gallantly defeating the most ferocious wrestler, Charles, the innocent youth Orlando loses his ability to speak when Rosalind gives him a token of love. When she leaves, he chides his speechlessness with these well-spoken words. Can I not say I thank you? My better parts are all thrown down, and that which here stands up is but a quintain, a mere lifeless block. And a few lines later he goes on and says, what passion hangs these weights upon my tongue? I cannot speak to her, yet she urged conference. Oh, poor Orlando, thou art overthrown, or Charles or something weaker masters thee. This is very articulate for someone who is unable to speak, but this is almost invariably the case in the Shakespearean style, wherein words could competently provide poetic objective correlatives for all human experiences, even speechlessness, where words by definition aren't supposed to exist. The other struck lover who claimed to be deprived of words is the debauched Bassanio from The Merchant of Venice. Not only does this one mesmerizingly surpass Orlando in expressing his debilitated speaking faculty, but in expressing his debilitated speaking faculty, Bassanio ironically surpasses all professional proficient orators. When his beloved Portia pronounced her love and loyalty to him, he said the following: Madam, you have bereft me of all words. Only my blood speaks to you in my veins, and there is such confusion in my powers as after some oration fairly spoke by a beloved prince, there doth appear among the buzzing pleased multitude, where every something being blent together turns to a wild of nothing, save of joy expressed and not expressed. Again, in reality, a dumbstruck individual could hardly voice their voicelessness with such profound metaphoricity. Now, as asserted previously, dumbstruckness and dumbfoundedness and such toys as these are not what is meant here by the unsettling beautiful moments where language falters. The moments at hand pertain to lines of dialogue that don't yield themselves to neat quotability, lines that sound worthless without contextualization. They are not your usual gaudy, all the world's a stage, nor your tuneful fair is foul and foul is fair, but rather they are clumsy sentences, and they are volitionally so, mind you. It is the case that Shakespeare achieved the best we humans could achieve in aesthetic endeavors, but by no means was he an infallible writer. He certainly had many flaws, but this clumsiness to which I am referring certainly is not one of them, for the clumsiness and the crudeness of those sentences were prudently volitional and incisively composed. Perhaps jumping to the first example before elaborating further would provide more clarity. The first example is a line from Antony and Cleopatra, uttered by none less than Cleopatra. It could be said about Shakespeare's Cleopatra that she is ambitious, but that could be misleading because I believe what she has is not ambition, but a sense of entitlement to have everything, an entitlement that she takes for granted just as any divine being does. When one has such a condition as she does, it wouldn't be strictly helpful if one has a life partner who harbors the same morbid sense of entitlement to conquer the entire world. Well, Cleopatra at some point had Julius Caesar for a life partner. I will leave it to you to draw all the possible analogies between Caesar and the concept of self-deification. When that latter deity died, Cleopatra found real love. However debatable the realness of that love may be, I say she found real love in someone something the opposite of a divinity, someone very mortal and flawed, earthly and visceral, that is Mark Antony. I think I squandered the epithet debauched in ascribing it to Bassanio earlier. I didn't have the foresight to consider that I may need it for the archetypical libertine Mark Antony. Hand in hand with the libertine, Cleopatra attempted to conquer the world, or at least retain the portions thereof of which she was already a mistress. She stirred him against his first love, Rome itself. Defeat wasn't even included in their vocabulary. They were defeated nonetheless. Rome has prevailed, and now Cleopatra is at the mercy of that whom she had often described to be a little boy yet to grow a beard, Octavius Caesar. What does an ancient Roman military leader do to the people whom he conquered? He drags them chained behind his chariot in the streets of the city for the Roman citizens to witness, because in such a slavery based economy, people are a part of the rich natural resources, and when the chained captive happens to be the king or the queen of the conquered nation, it adds a higher symbolic value that elevates the status and the popularity of that leader. For Octavius, enslaving the divine legend that is Cleopatra is the perfect opportunity to aggrandize his image and consolidate his sole authority over what was a republic just a few days ago. Cleopatra, being the former lover of two of the most prominent Roman leaders, was too well aware of that. Therefore, now she must adopt a Roman role and commit suicide before she becomes subject to such a disgrace. Our line comes in the last scene of the play when she is meeting Octavius for the first time. His prevalence and conquest are now undeniable. He needs her alive. She has to ascertain whether there is the slightest and most improbable chance for her deliverance. She is surrounded by the girls who serve her. Octavius enters, and the two have one of the most solemn, formal, heightened, decorous, and meticulously constructed colloquies in all Shakespearean plays. The two show each other profuse amity. He promises her that nothing will touch a hair from her head, that her stature will be as revered as ever. She acknowledges his authority with such piety as touches your heart. They eulogize each other in perfect blank verse that couldn't be written but by the bard Shakespeare. Octavius is thoroughly convinced that he did the best job in reassuring her. The audience and readers supposedly believe him. I know that I believed him the first time I read the play. The girls around her supposedly believe him. Octavius exits. Does Cleopatra believe him? Is she reassured? Will she retain her queenship, her goddess-like position? Will she be enslaved and dragged behind a chariot? Will she be sold in a Roman marketplace? Will she be Octavius's concubine? Will she be washing Octavius's wife's clothes? Does she have a reason not to kill herself? Does she believe Octavius? Does she believe all the kindness he displayed? We all need to know what she is thinking now. After his leaving the room, Cleopatra turns to her servants and says the line. She says, "He wards me, girls. He wards me. He wards me, girls. He wards me." Now, what is that? What kind of syntax is that? Is the word words functioning as a verb here? Is the S for the singular third person pronoun or for the plural? What phraseology is that? Is that the same Shakespeare who can smoothly write multiple, miraculous, complex soliloquies and monologues in one play? Is this even proper English, proper grammar, proper syntax? But you know what? I tell you what, she just demolished the entirety of the solemn, amiable conversation that immediately preceded the utterance of that line. In that line, she says that she does not believe him, she despises him, that she is smarter than he is, larger than he is, higher than he could ever reach, that such a mellow brat would never defeat her. She says that she, of course, will kill herself. How dare he words her? Such a brat. He words me, girls. He words me. I sometimes mumble this line to myself as I walk down the streets. This line could be recited by one as one recites Milton or John Keats or, well, Shakespeare. The full line goes as follows. He words me, girls, he words me, that I should not be noble to myself. No writer words me personally like Shakespeare. The second example where his language so beautifully, volitionally falters is a moment associated with the youthful, fierce, naive, brave, surely intrepid, manipulable, and compassionate Laertes, son of Polonius, brother of Ophelia. All characters from a fairly well-known play titled Hamlet. In Hamlet, Laertes is the opposite of Hamlet. If you combine the two, you have an ideal synthesis of a young man who possesses the most accurate proportions between contemplation and action. But apart from each other, you have the very two edges of a spectrum. Hamlet, as you know, is the epitome of dull, sterile, delirious, yet extremely intelligent cerebration. On the other edge, the precipitous Laertes could be described ironically by Hamlet himself as someone who would be exposing what is mortal and unsure to all that fortune, death, and danger dare, even for an eggshell. By uttering the line that is our example, Laertes indeed exposed his mortal self to the direst dangers, but it wasn't for an eggshell, it was for his father's sake. Such a compelling cause, of course. When I used the word brat for Octavius, I obviously meant it from Cleopatra's perspective, but now I will use the same word for Hamlet from my own perspective. Hamlet is a brat. I am always furious at artists and experts who believe that Hamlet is not actually certain about his uncle's guilt and he spends the play trying to acquire the fact. One of those is John Gielgud, an actor whom I deeply admire and consider to be one of the great masters of the craft. However, I can't be dissuaded from thinking this opinion to be utter nonsense. There are innumerable reasons why I am so intransigent about the matter, but I will mention only the one that is relevant to our topic here. Hamlet, as you know, was in his mommy's room, fulminating like an exemplary brat at how everyone was bad, praising only his father, whom I personally suspect to be a pathological narcissist, but that's a different topic. In the room, Hamlet, as you know, detects someone staring behind the curtain and he instantly slaughters them without trying to acquire any facts. The victim transpires to be Polonius, Laertes' father. Hamlet shamelessly demonstrates zero remorse. Polonius, irrelevant it is whether you contempt him or be impressed by him, had been for all his life incredibly cautiously managing to walk a tightrope while juggling political balls in the monarch's court. prudently securing and advancing his son's career in politics, establishing himself as a politician and a pander for whoever the incumbent king might be, deeply deliberating over whether his daughter should bear Hamlet Jr.'s child or never see him again, and giving his entire self to rulers as their most loyal servant. When he died, his son Laertes was the country's ambassador in a foreign land, working with diligence and compliance. This is a family that learned very well to do as they were told. They always know their place and their caste, their ilk, and know how to never antagonize their betters. They learned to so navigate as to maintain their dignity, secure their high status lifestyle, and circumvent a calamitous doom. When one masters such skills, they expect something in return, some appreciation, and certainly some safety. Laertes hears of his father's absurd, mysterious death, and suddenly he shrugs away all diplomacy, politics, protocol, and judiciousness. Suddenly, all the compassionate, intrepid, naive, and defiant parts of his personality rise to the surface. He travels back to Denmark and heads directly to the king's palace. He doesn't stop at his house to take a bath or a bite. Anger is his meat, and he will sup upon himself, as Volumnia says in the Coriolanus play. He makes a forced entrance to the hall where the king is and delivers the line in question. What does Laertes exactly want at this moment? To kill Hamlet? Does he know that Hamlet is the murderer? Does he think the king ordered the killing? Where is his father's funeral? Did a funeral take place? If so, why the hell didn't he, the son, attend it to lay his father's body in the grave himself? If not, why the hell not? Did his father denounce the Lord Jesus Christ in order to so not have a fitting ceremonious Christian burial? Why is there an abysmally little information about the death? Was there a trial? Will there be a trial? Who will be charged? Must he play the vigilante and take it upon himself to revenge? Who is responsible for all this? It is the king himself, for sure. None but the king and the king shall answer for it. Tempestuous rains of questions and demands are working in Laertes' head. How could how could Shakespeare deliver all those questions and demands in a very limited slot in the play's structure? Shakespeare surely can't make them have an extensive, placid conversation about it. What is the alternative then? It could be to postpone some of the issues and start with one of them for now. This is a valid solution. Laertes could enter and scream something about either the funeral or the murderer's identity or the trial, or inquire about what his father's fault was. But which issue should it be? It doesn't matter, because Laertes can't focus on one. It must be all. But Shakespeare cannot give him leisure to speak, as for example in King Lear, when he gave a character called Gentleman enough room to describe how alluring and sensational it was to witness on Cordelia's heavenly face a match between her smile and tears, and how her patience contended with her pain. No, it would serve Laertes nothing to be poetic at such a swift rhythm and a heated moment. The solution is to say an impoverished, clumsy sentence where language falters, and yet a sentence that encapsulates everything. Laertes enters the room, looks at Claudius, and says, "O thou vile king, give me my father. O thou vile king, give me my father. Give me my father. Now, what is that? Should the king reach into his pocket and fetch a father for this young man? What a peculiar choice of a verb. Give? Who would think of it? Would the typical 20th century absurdist dramatist choose this verb here? Give me my father. Give you your father? And how magical it is for a character to leap abruptly from calling the king your highness, your majesty, my lord, and so on, to calling him outright vile. He could have been decapitated immediately. I usually relish the two parts of the line separately. Firstly, O thou vile king, a king, vile, all kings are vile. Then the second part, give me my father. Well, give him his father, Claudius. Someone gives this young man his father, for he is enraged and would instantly, recklessly cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war. Those were only two examples. There is no limit to probing Shakespeare's language.